put a note down in this podcast, but the next brand I want to work with is the Chicago Bulls. I've been going back and forth with them a little bit, trying to figure out what game to shoot and kind of what their content needs are. But I fingers crossed, and I hope that it'll happen in the future. So my name is John Bach. I'm the creative director at Draw It Creative Shop, based in Chicago, Illinois. We're over in the Bucktown neighborhood, and I get to make awesome photo and video content for a living. So get to love what I do and love having a great company to do it with.
Awesome. How long have you been there in Chicago for?
So I've been in Chicago my whole life. Grew up in Chicago, out in the suburbs, northwest, and then I went to school at Michigan State University. Came back here for work now. So 25 years old, so been out of college for a few years, but did corporate sales and marketing for 2 years out of college, and then joined my friend Zach with the Draw It Creative Shop about 2.5 years ago.
That's awesome. Obviously, I've gone through your Instagram pretty in depth here. Felt a little bit weird about it at the beginning, but it's just something you got to do, right? I've noticed you photography and obviously content creation. What else do you like to do outside of work right now?
Outside of work, my biggest hobby is big sports fan. So sometimes when I get to cross over content and sports, it's kind of a perfect match right there. But weekends, usually hanging out with my girlfriend and friends and watching sports, hanging with the family. Like being outdoors, so any kind of hiking, fishing, biking, things like that. I like to live a very active lifestyle. So kind of always out and about in the city. And then when it gets cold in the winter, you're kind of stuck inside here in Chicago. So try to get out when we can.
Yeah. And you bring up sports. I saw that you recently worked with the Chicago Fire, of course, for the content team. Can you tell us a little bit of that experience?
Yeah, it was an awesome experience. So I guess a little bit before the Chicago Fire, in college, I shot for the Michigan State football team for 4 years. So that was kind of like the perfect match where I got to use college football and then do photos, do videos, all kind of mixed content creation. And then as I had been kind of building up content and the agency at Draw It Creative Shop, we had kept pushing all this different content out on Instagram. Some guys from the Chicago Fire took notice and they said, hey, we're hiring some freelance creatives to help on a few projects. And that's when they reached out to me and said, hey, can we do it? And I said, yep, we'll come out, we'll shoot. So it was awesome. I shot a couple different soccer games, shot a couple different concept pieces and commercials with them. But when I get to work on bigger like brand concepts like that, that's where we can really use a lot of that like content strategy and get more creative than just, hey, here's the camera and here's 20 photos. So it's fun. And the pro athletes are, they're a whole new ballgame because they've got all their own style and unique stuff. So they make the camera stuff easy sometimes because they're used to all the cameras in front of them.
How rewarding is it when you get someone like the Chicago Fire team reaching out to you and saying, hey, we like your stuff, we want to collab with you?
It's definitely really rewarding when you get a big company or a big brand like that to reach out and collab with you. I think it just really affirms that you're putting out the right content, you're in the right space. So for us to kind of get that, and then Zach and I to review and say, hey, we want to work with this brand and this company, it was super, super rewarding, and just kind of helps all the hard work pay off sometimes when you're like, why am I posting this on social media? Like, no one's going to see this, or, how many people are really going to take notice of this thing? You kind of never know who's watching.
I saw that you got obviously a lot of Chicago influence within not just your Instagram feed, but everyday life. Like I saw you had an off-white band for your camera. Of course, you got your Yeezys. Guys like Kanye West and Virgil Abloh, what kind of impact have they had on not just you, but the city of Chicago?
Oh, I mean, they've had a huge impact. Also, I thought that was a phenomenal question when I read it, just connecting all the things from my Instagram to the culture to kind of where those guys are from. But Virgil and them had a like an art museum display up for a while. And so a lot of people on the Instagram, like photography community, I had a ton of people that I knew were going to that. So it's cool to be able to go and check that out. But they just had a huge influence on the culture here. And Kanye, with him dropping his new album and everything, I wouldn't say I'm a huge Kanye like fanboy, but I think just his influence and him being able to like inspire other people is one of like the coolest things. Like if you look at his evolution from his old albums to where he is now, just like being able to speak his mind and people respecting him for that is super sweet. And then obviously Virgil, I think, is just so funny because he literally started an entire fashion brand just calling, a shirt and just being like, hey, we're all into this materialistic stuff right now. And the way social media and culture norms are, just being like, yo, that's a shirt. This is a hat. And like people just gravitating towards it. So I don't know if I'm big into the fashion stuff as much, but I definitely keep up with the cultures and trends. So those guys are cool.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because I don't know, Chicago's had such a weird impact on my life. Like my dad was a big Chicago Bulls fan. I am too. I love Kanye. I love fashion. So Virgil's another guy. Don C is another one from Chicago that I really like. Yeah, so it was really cool just searching you up and seeing that you like some of the same stuff. Yeah.
Just random Bulls fans, or did you guys have any like connection or family, or your dad just was a huge Bulls guy?
Well, of course, MJ in the '90s had that impact on him, and then D Rose for me was a big one in 2011. Even before that when he got drafted in 2008, and then now I love Zach LaVine, Lauri Markkanen. Sucks that we're not doing as well, but it's got to stick with it.
Yeah, that's put a note down in this podcast. But the next brand I want to work with is the Chicago Bulls. I've been going back and forth with them a little bit, trying to figure out what game to shoot and kind of what their content needs are. But I fingers crossed, and I hope that it'll happen in the future.
Yeah, I actually follow somebody. It was a photographer that has worked with them in the past. His name is. Well, his Instagram handle is Multi-Mars, and I was looking at some of the stuff he does, but it's also cool. Whenever I see like Benny the Bull and stuff like that, it's awesome to see. But
Benny the Bull is killing it on TikTok, by the way. If you're into TikTok, he has like crazy amounts of followers. He just does all the dance trends and stuff.
Well, he's one of the most ridiculous mascots I think in all of sports. So it's
totally.
Yeah. I also saw that you went to a social media conference out in San Diego. Can you tell us some of the highlights of that experience?
Yeah, so the social media conference was actually my business partner and great friend. It was Zach's idea. So he called me and he was like, hey, let's go to this conference in San Diego. I think we could really benefit and learn some things. And our company has experienced a lot of growth since that conference. But the biggest thing and the biggest takeaway from it is you're just sitting there and you're learning from so many different people in the industry, whether it's Facebook and social media ads, whether it's content creation, strategies for LinkedIn posting, Instagram posting. There was a guy there from Twitter who was just crazy good about how you should craft a tweet and the human psychology of the 140 characters and then them expanding it. So especially in the marketing creative space, I think just as a small company like we are, I think it's important that you get out there, you network with people, you kind of see what's working for others and you can replicate it, you can emulate it, you can kind of make it your own a little bit. So I think it just opened our eyes to a lot of things. I know Zach and I both got back from the conference. We said, wow, we should be implementing that in our business. Hey, we could be doing this different. And then there's also things that it's affirmation, right? You're like, hey, like that guy was talking about the exact same thing we did. Cool. We're in the right lane on that. Let's keep going down that track. So just a great overall learning experience. And that was the first time we had done something like that. So we'll definitely do more and we'll probably be going back this year as well.
Mm-hmm. Was it kind of a moment for you guys to kind of just step back, take a look at what you've done and see what you need to do moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it kind of helps you, I guess, kind of niche down like where your company wants to go. Like you see a few things, you're like, okay, this guy's talking about where the market's headed. Maybe we should get into that lane or get into a different lane with it. But definitely an affirmation too, because there are people there from like all skill levels of like, hey, I'm John and I just want to start my first business and I'm trying to get a taste of what social media marketing is like. And then you have other guys who are doing millions of dollars every month in Facebook ads being like, hey, here's the 3 tips and tricks you guys need to put in your ads. So like the skill sets like that. So for us to be somewhere in the middle of it, it helps, I guess, and kind of reaffirms that we're in the right market and the right spot.
I think it's so important to have stuff like that, whether it's a conference or just something to go to and really collaborate, because a lot of the social media market has been kind of saturated. You see all these different agencies kind of working towards that. Has it been difficult to kind of stand out?
Yeah, a little bit. And I would say that's probably the question I get the most on Instagram or LinkedIn or when I'm in person meeting with people is like, hey, how do you stand out? How do you build a following? How do you do this? And like you said, it's a lot more saturated than it used to be. So it's tougher to stand out, right? Any market gets more saturated. It's harder to. But the one thing I always tell people is that good content always wins. So no matter what platform you're on, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, if you have good, fun, engaging content, you're always going to win the platform. You're going to get the followers, you're going to get the likes, the comments, and all that stuff. So it's definitely tough to stand out at times, and there's definitely creative ruts everyone goes through, I think. But in a saturated market, you just got to keep creating fun content and just stand out as much as you can.
Mm-hmm. A lot of it is probably just sticking with it and staying consistent, right?
Totally. I mean, outside of like the algorithm for a lot of the social media channels and and stuff we hear about at the marketing agency. It's just like consistent posting like all the time. Like even right now, I just took like 2 weeks off posting on my normal Instagram. And like, I already see the profile views going down and all these other things where it's like, you just got to keep going up and up and up on the daily to get that engagement and get that following. So consistency and great content. Those are the two things that are always going to, help you win on social media.
Mm-hmm. I saw on your guys' website, you have this phrase, and it's afraid of old ideas. That's something I'm sure you and Zach came up with. Can you tell us what that means exactly and how you came to that motto?
Yeah. So afraid of old ideas is something that Zach came up with. He had started the company 3 months before I joined on. He came to me, he said, "Hey, I want to partner up. Let's do this thing." And then the first thing he said is, "What do you think of afraid of old ideas?" It's kind of our slogan and tagline. And at that point I was getting out of TV sales. Zach was getting out of radio sales. So you think TV, radio, okay, those are old school forms of advertising. Those are old ideas, let's go away from that. And people were really receptive to it at first. You'd walk into a meeting and talk about content creation and social media. And they'd be like, "Hey, I really liked your phrase, afraid of old ideas." And I think it works as a company because it just shows that we're always moving forward. If Facebook becomes the old idea tomorrow, I'm on a TikTok, I'm on to the next thing. So trying to figure out what's next and what's always best. And I think as like a company for a slogan, it always shows our clients that, hey, we're pushing the boundaries. We're not going to sit in the same rut for the next 15, 20 years. We're going to go out and reinvent ourselves next week if we have to get on the next trend and get out of those old things. But I'm glad you like it as well, because we've gotten a lot of good feedback on it over the first 2.5 years of the company. Yeah,
it's kind of that hook or that grabber that really gets somebody, right? If you look on our website, the first thing you see is just every possibility. And it's a phrase, big and bold. So it's something that I think a lot of people should move towards because it really attracts attention, right?
Totally. And there's so many things, like even just saying that on your guys' websites, like there's so many things that you need to like hook into a website. Zach and I always joke that's like any social media marketing company, every site you go to, it's like, we do it all. Like, check out our SEO, check out Facebook. And I'm like, that's the last thing I want to say when we get to the site. I was like, "Zach, we can put whatever you want on the site, but just not that. Like, something to stand out and be different."
Yeah, just going against the grain, because everywhere you look, it kind of just looks cookie cutter almost. Everyone's building off of each other, but they're not actually building. They're more just, I don't want to say stealing, but it's a lot of copying.
Yeah, there's a lot of replication out there. Kind of goes back to what you said a little bit earlier. It's like the saturation in the market kind of creates that replication. Like you see a sweet concept, you're like, "Oh, let's do that. Try that out." Exactly.
Now, can you kind of talk to us about your journey in becoming creative director at Dula and what kind of motivated that?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess to kind of start on the journey, it would start off way back in middle school. So the first video that I made and got paid for was in middle school. It was 8th grade. And it was for the Special Olympics of Illinois. And I got paid $150. I will never forget it. And I thought it was the coolest thing. I had my dad's Sony Exactee HD camera, one of those little like flip out cameras. I would go after school. I probably filmed like a week of practices. I drove down an hour to go to the whole like tournament, like ceremony thing. So my hours paid and worked and what I actually made off that video probably is not right. But it was the first time I got paid to like create something and do what I love. So then carried that through high school. My high school video teacher, Jeff Doles, was a huge impact and kind of gave students a big platform to create on. So we had this thing called Barrington High School Television, and students would make like television segments. So you'd be like, "In the lunchroom this week, it's chocolate milk week. Big news is happening." So it was cheesy and corny stuff. And then we started filming sports and football, and we're like, "Hey, we could really make some sweet stuff with the football team or the baseball team." Then taking the next step to college, worked with my boss there, Matt Harper. And on the football team, he allowed us to do anything we wanted for the most part. If we had an opportunity, said, "Hey, we have this idea for a photography thing," he'd say, "Hey, let's find a way to make that happen." So to be a part of a huge Division I college football program like that and to be able to create content, I think that's when I saw like, hey, this could be a full-time job. Like middle school, high school, it felt a little bit like a hobby. Like you're still kind of figuring out what you want to be. And heck, even at 25, I feel still so young. But in college, it's, you got to have a major and have a job and have all these different things. When you graduate, that's when it kind of became a possibility. So when I graduated, I went the reverse of that, though, and went into corporate sales, just thinking, hey, that's the business route. There's more money in it, just kind of going that corporate lane. And luckily 2 years later, kind of got back to the creative realm with Zach. So we started going to lunch and dinner and just talking about different marketing schemes and kind of how we could stand out in the marketing game these days. And that's when I started to pick the camera back up again and started to create once again. So there was a little hiatus after college, but it's always been the true love has always been creation. So thank goodness that Zach started to pull me out of the corporate sales game and came to me with the idea of having an agency together.
Yeah. Hey, congrats on finding that, man. Not everyone gets to do, what they love. I think a lot of people get caught up in wanting to make more money or job security. But I think there's so many more opportunities these days, especially the people we've talked to. A lot of them are realtors who are technically their own bosses, right? It's kind of staying away from that typical 9 to 5 that has been so traditional and just, for lack of better words, boring, because it takes away from you as a person. So that's awesome.
No, I totally agree with you, man. And it's just like, it's so refreshing to hear you say that as someone who like just graduated and is like getting into like the workforce per se, is because like I was so blinded by like that old school route that was like, hey, I got to go to a corporate job. I got to climb the ladder. I got to build a book of business and sales and this and that. And it's like looking back on it, it's, I can make just enough to cover rent and my basic needs right now. And I can be the happiest guy in the world. So it's like, money's not everything. It's a long life we live. So to be miserable and chasing that corporate stuff sometimes isn't always the best, even though it might seem like they're out. So yeah, I got lucky. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Of course, you had your friend to back you up, Zach Dula. Of course, you talk about him a lot. What is the atmosphere kind of like in the office at Dula?
Office is awesome. Super laid back atmosphere over at the creative shop. So Zach's always bringing his dog in, Art. He's a 90-pound golden retriever mix, so he keeps it plenty lively for us. And then we have Kathleen, who is our head account manager, graphic designer, and then a couple other video editors who are on with us on a project-by-project basis. So Joey, Dalton, Dean, a few other guys. So anywhere from 2 or 3 of us in the office, or 5, 6, 7 of us on a daily basis. So it's an awesome atmosphere, though. We get the espresso machine going. We put music on. I've got sports on the TV, whether the rest of the staff likes it or not sometimes. But yeah, super collaborative. And I think it's really important to have that kind of environment, especially in a creative agency, right? It's like if we were to put everyone in cubicles at their desk and say, hey, this is your desk. This is where you sit. Don't talk to anyone. Those creative ideas aren't going to flow. So especially in our industry, it's important to kind of always have that open workspace. Except if Zach puts on the same playlist for the 3rd day in a row, then I might put my headphones on and chill on my own for a little bit.
That kind of reminds me of our office. We don't have the typical cubicles. We just have these larger desks that everyone sits at. So it's a lot more freeing when you're brainstorming or you're just trying to get ideas flowing. So I think that's a route that a lot of companies are kind of going towards, just because it kind of creates, new opportunities for people to really share their voice.
Absolutely. How many of you guys are on staff there? How many is total at Draw It Paint?
So right now we only have 3 so far. It's a lot smaller of an office, but we're looking to build. So hopefully we can get some more guys. But
that's awesome.
There's a lot more in the Seattle office, of course, just because it's head office. But yeah. Now another thing I wanted to ask you. Something we've noticed a lot about the mentors the experts that we've interviewed in the past is the mentorship that they've received. Is this something you've had over your career or even when you were a student?
Yeah, absolutely. I think mentorship is huge. And I think that's why Zach and I always try to give back when other people want to learn, whether it's photography people, video people who are trying to start their own business, because we kind of had those role models to us growing up who helped us get where we were. So I'm never one of those people who's closed off when it comes to like mentoring or answering questions. I always give out my number probably too freely to people. I'm like, text me if you got questions, hit my DMs, call me, like I'll help out when I can. But I guess two of the people that I go to right away is, I think my dad was one of my biggest mentors from a business mindset. He has his own business and has for almost 30 years, I think. So he really helped me with that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, if you will. And then the 2 guys in the video realm from a teacher standpoint would be Jeff Dole's my teacher from high school, who really just gave us that freedom to flourish at Barrington High School, as well as Matt Harper at Michigan State to let us do what we wanted to do with the football program and kind of teach us and mentor us there. So have to give them a shout out on the interview there.
Do you think that's where that want or that drive for having your own mentees and always giving advice comes from, is that you had such great leadership or guidance in the past?
Definitely, definitely. And there was no one, even like all the way from high school to college, like there was no one that was like quote unquote above me, whether it was like my boss, you know, financially they're paying me like they are in charge of me when I'm on a work premises, all the way to just other guys who were on staff who maybe, hey, you're more talented than me as a videographer. There were never people who were like hiding their secrets from me or like saying, this is my work, you can't help share it or help promote it, or help shoot on it. So I might have lucked out in that sense. And as you spoke on earlier, like as the creative market and like social media and everything becomes more saturated, you do get people who they really want to hide, like, yo, this is my concept, this is my piece of work, you can't share it. So I think I lucked out early just having people in the film and video industry who are willing to help and willing to teach me, because I truly believe that you learn best when you're with others, right? There's so much you can learn on YouTube and through tutorials and things, but you can't teach a creative eye when you're on site at a shoot for the Chicago Fire and you have a million things happening around you at once and your eyes are going like this, like crazy. Like, what shot am I going to look for? So being able to hang out with other people in the industry is huge.
Yeah. Another thing that we've experienced a lot is goal setting. Have you set any goals for yourself, whether it was at the beginning of college, after college, even becoming the creative director at Dula? Has this been a big part of your career so far?
It's a funny question because I immediately like want to answer yes, that goal setting is really big and it's really important. And there's definitely goals I think about on a daily basis, whether it's like, hey, I want to get this camera, or hey, I want Dula Creative Shop to be billing this much a month as an agency. So there's definitely some goals like that, but I haven't been that good about putting down like specific things on paper. Like, I want this to happen by this date, I want that to happen by that date. So maybe this conversation for me will spark a little kind of New Year's tradition for 2020 and kind of have some more solidified goals. But yeah, no, I'm not going to pretend like I've been a great goal setter. I'm just going to be honest with it.
Yeah, no, it's something I ask a lot of people, but it's not something I do really for myself. Like I'll make, these everyday to-do lists, but as far as where do I see myself in 5, 10 years, that kind of stuff, I've never really been one to do that. Yeah. I think that's just because personally, I like to take things day by day. And I'm grateful for that. But would you say you're the same, or is it just like never really crossed your mind?
Yeah, I'm definitely similar to you and kind of like a live in the moment type guy. I think it helps with my stress levels to say, hey, what can I tackle today and be great at from, I'm going to be really good in this interview. I'm going to give you my full focus. And then after this, I'm going to go edit another video and just be focused on that. So being present and being in the moment is something I try to be really good at. Because I think when you look at that bigger picture, you can start to worry about things and say, oh, shoot, well, 5 years ago, I thought I was going to be here or there, these different goals. But I think setting the goals, like you said, is, maybe we need to get better at it. Maybe it's more important for the future because kind of keep your eyes on the prize and that certain thing.
Yeah. Now, John, of course, you talked to us earlier a little bit about your career after university and getting into corporate sales. Would you say that was one of your moments of adversity, trying to get past that and realizing that it wasn't for you?
Definitely. It's a two-pronged sword with like the corporate sales and facing that adversity. Is the corporate sales job opened me up and gave me a ton of skills about, hey, hard business skills, how to sell, how to present in meetings, how to pitch a TV contract to, a boardroom of 12 people. So just from like a social presentation skills and a sales efforts, like that was huge for me. And I always tell people, like, we couldn't do what we do a creative shop because Zach and I still do a lot of the selling and pitching to clients, is we couldn't do what we do without that corporate background. But at the same time, it definitely was a lot of adversity. Like at the end of my corporate sales days, I was dying to create. I would go home at night or after a sales meeting, I would just pick up my camera and start looking for stuff to shoot. So super fortunate that Zach had reached out and said like, hey, like I'm going through this same thing. Like, I don't know what's next, but I'm just like restless inside. Like I need to do something else because A, I know there's a better product out there for clients and marketing, but B, internally, like this is not my passion. I need to go do that instead. So that there were a couple months there, and you can ask my parents, you can ask my girlfriend. They were like, John, you were kind of miserable for a few months. And I was like, I'm a pretty positive human being. So if they say I was like, quote unquote, miserable for a little stretch of time, I don't blame them. I kind of trust them on that. So I would definitely call it adversity.
I can only imagine. I mean, doing something that doesn't feel right. It's a bad place to be, or it can get to a bad place. But I'm glad you overcame it, of course. And
Yeah.
happy with where
You're
you're at
selling
today.
like with TV too. It's like I was selling a product I didn't believe in. So it was like, sure, I could sell you on a TV contract and tell you it's going to be a great thing, but then you feel like you're letting people down. Like no matter what you're in, whether it's for a paycheck or selling or just us talking to this interview, or if I miss this interview, right? Like I'd feel like I let you guys down, and no one wants to feel that way. So I hear you on that.
Yeah, I think it's one of the worst feelings in the world, but
Totally
yeah.
agree.
Yeah. What other kind of moments of adversity or hardships have you gone through, or hurdles that you learned from?
So I feel like Zach and I always tell this story if we're on like a podcast or an interview, but there was, I think it was a year or two ago. It was like the first couple months of the agency, and we were billing, we were getting clients, we were kind of building that book of business. And we woke up one morning in January and bank account was red. Bank account was dead negative on the company. So we're like, all right, how are we going to pay ourselves? How are we going to do anything right now? And it's not that we didn't have any business. It's that we were just not being good business owners. We weren't collecting our money. So we had all this outstanding money that we're like, oh, it'll come in. It'll come in. Well, it's not going to come in unless Zach or I called them and told the clients they had to pay. So we woke up one morning, the bank account was negative. It was red. And that's when Zach and I had a little bit of a panic attack and had to face some adversity. So that's when we kind of buttoned down the hatches and said, hey, this needs to be our systems going forward with the business. These are the things we need to figure out and work on. That was a little bit scary, when it was just the two of us at that point too. We had no employees. It was just the two of us kind of hustling, grinding, figuring out where the company's going to go. So that was a very, very interesting morning.
I think it's great because it sounds like, well, not the situation, of course, but your relationship with Zach, it sounds like the communication is always top notch and you guys are always talking. You're on top of things. Even when, you forget something like that, it sounds like you had a plan and you guys just took it head on.
Yeah, I mean, plan or lack thereof. But Zach and I have gotten really lucky as business partners. We don't really fight a lot, if at all. And we're always really collaborative in the fact that Zach is an incredible business mind when it comes to sales, when it comes to systems, when it comes to creative thinking, where I categorize myself as the creative director, the wizard behind the camera type thing. So we have a really, really good balance that I think we've gotten really, really lucky with.
Mm-hmm. Were you kind of hesitant at the beginning, getting into business with a friend?
Totally. And Zach and I were good friends. So the funny backstory on Zach and I is Zach was on the high school football team and I was filming the high school football team. So still to this day, there's like photos of me where it's like I have my camera and Zach's like catching a pass as a wide receiver. And I'm like, I was like, really nothing's changed. Like we're still doing the same stuff more or less. But going into business with a friend. And I think I was almost like too naive to it at the start. It's like you kind of don't know what it's going to become. And Zach and I, when we first got on board together, was like, hey, we're in this for the long haul. And just having that long-term vision helped a ton, being like, hey, like, whatever I do is going to benefit you. Whatever you do is going to benefit me. Like, let's start this company and kind of figure things out. And Zach had a lot of that mold and mindset already set, where I was lucky enough to be able to jump in and kind of help the rocket ship take off in the right direction. But yeah, it's definitely nerve-wracking because you never want to burn a bridge with anyone or never want a friendship to die because of business or money or anything like that in life. But I don't think Zach and I are going to have that issue.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like you guys are on the right track. So I think you'll be just fine.
So far, so good.
Yeah. Can you take us through what the client experience is like? I know every client's different, but if you want to take us through maybe some of your favorite ones.
Yeah. Like the actual system and process a client would follow, or okay. So I would say, so once a client comes on board with us, the biggest thing is that we all have the same page and have like our vision aligned. So we set up a brainstorm call and we have an onboarding call right away. We say, hey, what are these things that we want to tell about your brand? What's the video going to look like? What are the photos going to look like? Give us these must-have shots. And that just steers away a lot of confusion that clients can have in the creative space, because there's a lot of people who like have been in the creative space or companies that have dealt with creative agencies, yet they've been burned or they didn't feel like they got the product they wanted. And the only way they don't get what they want is because of communication, right? Or a lack of like transparency or open, honest communication with the relationship. So even when I'm just selling and pitching businesses, I always outline how we're going to work together. I say, hey, if you guys choose to go forward with this contract, we'll have an opening brainstorm call. Then you'll fill out a shot list. Then you'll go through our onboarding form, and then you'll drop in. I'll have all of it on file in our CRM system. And then we get to make the magic happen and do the fun stuff of creating the videos and the photos and all that stuff. But Zach does a lot of like the systems and processes and that stuff. And he has a ton of automation set up with it, where it's like client fills out this form, it gets emailed to me, it gets emailed to our video system, and it all stays like perfectly organized. So it makes my job pretty easy there.
Mm-hmm. What would you say would be your Mount Rushmore or your top 4 favorite clients, dream clients really to work with, besides of course the Chicago Bulls, who you've already talked about a little bit?
Yeah. I think hometown Chicago sports teams are definitely on the list. Zach and I have been working on getting a couple of those meetings and reaching out to their creative network. But kind of the Mount Rushmore of clients for me is just, and it might sound cliche, but I don't think there's like a specific brand or client. Like for sports, the Chicago teams, Nike, Adidas, any big sports brand would be awesome. But the best client relationships that we have are the clients that trust and believe in you and know the value of what you do is going to help them. So whether it could be a clothing brand, a travel accessory company, hotels, resorts, anything like that, it's like as long as they know the value of content and know that you're treating each other well, I think that's when the client relationship is best. But yeah, something in the hotel travel game is what I've been really into lately, in sports. Those are kind of the 2 categories that I think would be really fun to kind of continue to get into. So yeah, and then eventually the Chicago Bulls. We'll get there.
Yeah. You kind of talk on how important it is to receive that freedom from clients. Have you guys had any pushback from whether it was something they wanted edited or something they really tried to push, but it wasn't part of your creative vision?
A little bit sometimes, and it always happens that way with the creative process. I mean, we always include a couple revision rounds in our video, and some clients feel really bad when they ask for revisions, say, hey, we love the video, it was awesome, but we have these 3 things. And I always tell them, I say, I'm not offended by edits, or none of our team or video directors is offended by edits. That's part of the creative process, and things that you might think looks amazing, I might not agree with, and vice versa. So there's definitely shots and things that I've taken in or out of videos that I might not have completely agreed with. But if I do that, I always remind myself and ask myself, at the end of the day, does the product still tell the story that we want it to? Whether your shot's in it, my shot's in it, or the client's changes in it. And if it does that, then I'm good with it.
Right. Is that kind of the biggest deciding factor when working with clients? You kind of just like, as long as it relates to you guys, your brand, what you do, then it should be all right.
Yeah. And it's just kind of comes down to like the purpose of the video. If a client is trying to do a brand video and they say, hey, we want to tell our story, and then they're like, let's include this shot of that. I'm like, how does that correlate to your brand story that you just told me? Like, that doesn't work. So sometimes it's like keeping them on track. And then, sometimes it's us saying, hey, the shot looks amazing. And then looking at it in post-production going, well, that doesn't tell a story or help us get to the end result that we want to. Even though it may look cool and look amazing, if it doesn't push the story in the right direction, then, we need to look at it from a different angle.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, in the day and age that we live in, technology and innovation is such a big factor of it. How much has it really propelled what you do?
Huge. I think just social media, and the fact is Zach and I are both really active on LinkedIn. And I think people in the video and photography space, they probably don't think about going on LinkedIn that much, but for Zach and I, it's been a huge tool to help kind of sales and just get our names out there in the business space. But I guess when you say innovation and kind of technology, it's like we kind of went back to earlier with Afraid of Old Ideas. It's like all the last month, all I've heard about is TikTok. And I'm sitting here every day thinking, what kind of content can I put on TikTok that's going to, pop or get us more attention or kind of figure that out. So it's like always just looking for the next thing and never being complacent. I think that's when people, and that's when companies get into trouble, is when, maybe paychecks going smooth, they have a nice salary, have a nice income. They're like, all right, like we're good. Like we're just going to keep doing this. Well, if you just stay in that status quo and do that same thing over and over, eventually, you're going to come by and you're going to overpass me. And I'll be sitting there going, how Noel get past me on this and that, So it's always moving with the innovation. If you can keep up with it, you're good.
Yeah. Do you think a constant theme has been just not wanting to be left behind?
A little bit. I wouldn't say as much as like left behind, as trying to be ahead of the curve, I guess. Because I just think even in the marketing creative agencies, I think there's so many people who are still sitting back and buying TV or radio or doing these old things when there's so much attention on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all these other things we talk about. is it's like, I just never want to be that company that's like not afraid of getting left behind, I guess, but I want to be the company that is, paving the way into the future, saying, whoa, that agency is just doing Snapchat ads or Snapchat video editing. Like, that is crazy. We need to hop on that train with them. So if I can keep staying on the hot topics, I guess it's a win.
Right. Now, John, you've talked quite a bit about your career thus far. How do you balance your life as far as personal life and your work?
That's an awesome question, because it's very hard, and I really don't a lot of the time, especially being a creative director and also being like an owner in the company. It's a lot different, right? So when Zach and I have to talk about finances, when we have to talk about client relationships, admin emails, anything, right? It falls into my umbrella as well. So not only do Zach and I carry our daily tasks of, director of digital strategy and creative director, but we're also the business owners who sit here and say, hey, we got to pay these employees. We got to write these paychecks. Has the office been cleaned? Every single little detailed task that falls on your lap as a business owner, I think is what people don't see sometimes. It's the beauty and curse of owning a business, but I wouldn't have it any other way with that. And I think that having a balance is super important, because there's times where I get burnt out and I feel like, oh my gosh, like I've been working like crazy, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, it's 10 o'clock. Like, I haven't put my laptop down all day. What am I doing? So definitely drawing those lines helps, and just kind of making sure you're self-conscious about it. So yeah, just self-awareness in that aspect is the only way to stop it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. It's good to have that balance, but sometimes it's difficult to see it or draw that boundary when you love work or love what you do so much, right?
Yeah. Well, it's super hard too. I mean, kind of like you said, it's like people like, I think in our day and age with the culture too, it's like people are always like, hustle, grind, get ahead, like work harder. Like the only way you're going to get there is that. A lot of it's true, but at the same time, it's like your body and your mind needs to rest at certain times and take that day off and take that break and go to the gym or go for a hike and get outside. And you're going to operate better because of taking that time to step back instead of just drowning yourself in work mode for, 12, 14 hours. So balance is key, man. I hear you.
Mm-hmm. And John, one of the main things we actually wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to someone looking to pursue a career in content creation?
The biggest advice I give someone who's trying to get into content creation would be surround yourself with good people, treat people well, and make content that's unique and stands out. I think that's the biggest thing is when clients come to us or we meet with people, every time they see example videos, they say, what you guys do is different. And they don't know what different is. I can know the technicality of it is, hey, I did this in Premiere Pro or this in the editing software. But just being different and unique and standing out. It kind of goes to what we talked about earlier with like people replicating the same thing over and over. So you have everyone who wants to be an entrepreneur these days, everyone who wants to own their own business and be their own boss and feel empowered. And that's awesome. It's great the economy as well and that everyone can do that. But at that same time, you need to have a unique viewpoint and a unique business opportunity to present to someone. Otherwise, you're just going to blend in with the rest of the crowd in that fact. So standing out, treating people well, and surrounding yourself with mentors and good people who are going to build you up and keep you positive on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. I think it's great advice. Can't wait to get it out to the people. Going into the final part of our interview here is a segment we like to call Fun Stuff, where we just ask some things about your city and a couple overarching trends that we kind of want to just pick your brain on. The first one is, what do you like so much about Chicago?
Love the atmosphere, love the energy that it gives off, and most importantly, my family. Family's all here and friends are all here, so staying close to them is important to me.
Mm-hmm. And in contrast, what annoys you about it?
Traffic. Traffic sucks in Chicago. Zach always jokes that he's like, I won't drive to a meeting like during traffic. I'll go out like 2 hours early and go work from Starbucks so I don't have to sit in before the meetings. He's like, you just hate traffic. I'm like, yeah, I do. Other than traffic, not too much. Not too much.
Do you think it'll always be home for you?
Yeah, I definitely think it will for the most part. I could always see myself going and traveling a lot of places. That's something I've kind of set off to do in 2020 is to take more travel, find those hotels and resorts to work with and things like that. But I think Chicago will always be home as long as the family and friends are here. If they go somewhere, then maybe we'll have to all pick up and go somewhere together. But tight-knit family is important to me.
Right. So what's the bucket list for traveling?
Oh, man, there's so many places, bucket list travel. So Zach and I are going to Arizona this weekend, actually. doing some hotel photography for a resort in Arizona. And then a couple bucket list places. I really want to go to Dubai. I don't have any draw why. I've just seen a bunch of pictures and cool stuff. I think it would be sweet. My girlfriend and I really want to get back to Europe. That's a big one. Went there in college for 3 months together on like a study abroad program. But need to go back there because there's so much to do in Europe. And then obviously a couple places domestically or, over in Canada. Banff has been on the list. My roommate and I are always looking up pictures of Banff. We're big Peter McKinnon fans. You know who Peter McKinnon is. We follow him on the daily. So we're always looking at what he's up to and what he's creating out there. So we'll make it up there eventually.
Yeah. And of course, feel free to reach out again because I'll tell you some good spots.
I'm going to 100% going to take you up on that.
Yeah. If you were in charge of Chicago for a day, what do you think you'd do?
In charge of Chicago for a day? I don't know. Everyone could have some free deep dish pizza, free Chicago dogs for everybody. But I don't know. I just tell everyone to get outside and enjoy it. I think even I get caught up in this. Like, I live in Chicago and I haven't explored it as much as I wish I would. I always remind myself, like, hey, don't sit around on a Sunday. Like, there's probably a place in the city you haven't seen or haven't eaten at. So just getting out and exploring it is big.
Mm-hmm. Where would you recommend for, say, someone who's never been there before, whether it's these super touristy spots or just some hidden gems of Chicago?
Yeah. So Chicago, biggest things you got to do would definitely be the deep dish pizza, Chicago dogs, Billy Goat Tavern is a really good cheeseburger place that's down underneath Lower Michigan Ave. Touristy spots, you're going to hit Millennium Park with the Bean, Cloud Gate that everyone sees in the photos. And then getting up to North Avenue and Oak Street Beach is really cool. Just being right on Lake Michigan, sitting there, hanging out on the beach and doing some stuff down the river. I think Chicago's awesome because it has the river running right through the middle of it. So you can do kayak tours in the river, which is epic. You're just sitting there kayaking, you see the water, and then you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, there's all these buildings going on. So that's super cool. Renting jet skis to go ride around on the lake is sweet. So summertime Chicago is the best for sure. So plenty to do, but the warmer weather definitely helps for some of those activities that are unique.
Mm-hmm. What's the atmosphere of the city like? Of course, it's one of the biggest American cities. When something like Lollapalooza or a well-known event is going on?
It's just hustle and bustle. It's super busy. I mean, the trains are packed. The whole town is in on the event. So even, when the Cubs won the World Series a few years ago and even back in the early 2000s when the White Sox won it, it's like the whole city just becomes electric and kind of lights up for that event. And Chicago can get like slightly spread out just based on the neighborhoods. You could be 3 miles north of downtown, but it's still technically a city zip code, and you could be up there in Lakeview at a bar with a bunch of people. So the fun story, I guess, with like kind of lighting up the city with energy is when the Cubs were in the World Series playing their road games, we would get off work and go to a bar, and everyone was getting off work early. Like the entire city was jumping out of work at 3 o'clock to go like post up and get a bar spot. I remember running out of Comcast and running like down to a local bar and getting like the last table for like Game 7 of the World Series and meeting up with all my friends. Like, oh, my boss isn't going to let me off. Like maybe I can come. I was like, just leave. Like it's the World Series. So the whole city gets behind whatever event or concert thing is going on here.
Yeah. Of course, you guys had the Blackhawks in the early 2010s and Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves had quite a bit of success there. But what was it like when the Cubs finally did it? Was the whole city kind of up in arms, or was it?
Oh, it was crazy. We were at a bar about maybe a mile from the stadium, and we left the bar as soon as the game ended, and all the streets were blocked, flooded the streets. We're walking around doing whatever. It almost looked like a riot or protest. Like no one had any idea what to do or what was going on. All the cars just stopped and were just honking their horns. Like it was one of the wackiest scenes I've ever been a part of. I still have videos like on my phone and stuff from it, but I remember just walking down the sidewalk with all my friends just being like, no one knows what to do right now. Like no one thought it was actually going to happen and no one has any idea how to act right now. So there were probably like 3 or 4 blocks all around Wrigley Field. People were just standing, just like talking and hanging out. And it was a weeknight when it happened too, because everyone's like, oh, I got to go to work the next day,
Yeah, even on the outside looking in, I was like, this is pandemonium. Like being in Edmonton, of course, we're the Oilers, and you haven't had the same success in recent memory. But back in the day, in like 2006, I remember how crazy the city was during a Cup run. So I can only imagine what it's like when you actually win.
Yeah, eventually, right?
Yeah. Now going in. Oh, go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say pandemonium is a great word for it.
Yeah, hockey's such a big thing in Canada, and I don't know if you remember when Chicago beat Vancouver. Um, there were flipped cars, there were riots and stuff like that. So there's the opposite side too, right?
Love and hate sports, man. It's the
Yeah,
passion and energy, I guess is why we love it so much. But man, make people do crazy things.
yeah, exactly. Now going into the final segment of the fun stuff, we have the overarching trends, and we wanted to ask you, um, iPhone or Android?
iPhone. iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a shameless slave to Apple with all that stuff. So iPhone with the Mac with the editing software from back in the day, and just kind of been on it ever since. I always use AirDrop to AirDrop like my photos and videos to my phone to text out to clients or post on Instagram and stuff. So until Windows comes out with something as seamless as AirDrop, I think I'm stuck.
Are you an AirPods guy too?
I have them, but I really don't like them, to be honest. So if someone wants to hit me up with headphones that are better than AirPods, that's what I need to explore. They always just cut out when I'm on conference calls and stuff, and I can't figure them out. So maybe it's on my Christmas list to get a new pair of headphones.
Yeah, all of my friends are on it, and they're trying to get me on it, but I'm fine with just the cord. It's cool with me.
Yeah, I honestly go back to the cord when I'm in the car on a call or something. My Bluetooth interferes with it and stuff. Technology for better or worse sometimes, man.
Yeah, I think the beauty in Apple products is how simple they make it. So when something's even a little bit complicated, you're turned off by it.
Yeah, I'm like, no, this isn't why I was supposed to get it.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like that false advertising. But
Totally.
now the final question that we wanted to ask you, you talk a decent amount about TikTok and how that's revolutionized social media. With the constant focus on short-term video consumption or media consumption, do you think that'll change within the next few years, or do you think this is really where we're headed?
I think it's really where we're headed. Just the way society's been kind of conditioned to have that instant gratification of things, saying, "Hey, I want it now, I get it now." Everything from consumer goods like Amazon being at our door the next day, to Instagram video content and TikTok content where you can watch a video for 15 seconds, laugh, and then move on to the next thing. So I think it's here to stay, and just figuring out how you're going to capitalize on it and how you're going to win is the next big thing. So something we've done at the agency is we offer like social media packages with all of our videos. So our stance on it is, hey, if you're going to shoot a 60-second or a 2-minute brand piece for your website, that's awesome. And it still has its place in today's day and age. But why let all that footage and content sit on a hard drive when you could go away and make 20 different social media assets from that video shoot? That's been something we've kind of steered on the last couple months and really shifted our focus, like you were saying, kind of to the future with it. And every client has been super receptive to it, saying, yes, we would love to add that on. That is going to be a big part of our strategy because everyone needs content at the end of the day. Content is king for better or for worse. And every single brand needs it, no matter what kind of product you're selling.
Yeah, that's even kind of the approach we've taken with the expert series. Is that's why we like to conduct the interview, of course, but we'll break it down into these smaller segments that we'll launch on Instagram, Facebook, whatever it may be, just so people can consume it in whatever way they want, right?
They're way more consumable that way. I immediately noticed that when I went to you guys' Instagram too. I was like, well, what are they doing with the content? I was on a podcast about a month ago, kind of doing the same thing, like a little get to know you. And it was like a dual one with Zach and I. And he just released like one long form bit from it, which is great. But then what did Zach and I do? Like we went and started chopping it up into these other little things we could throw on LinkedIn, throw on Instagram. So when I saw you guys were doing that, I was like, all right, this company gets it. Like they're in the right space. Like they're asking the right questions. So I was excited to see you guys have the same mindset on it.
Yeah, and we're happy you took the time to look at it. So thank you, man.
100%. You guys are doing cool stuff over there. So happy to jump on the, I keep calling it a podcast, the interview. It's an interview.
We're actually exploring the avenue of podcast as well. So
A little bit.
You got it.
Content. Let's call it content.
Content. Exactly. Now, Zach, you've told us about your humble beginning as a junior high videographer and your love for your company and your business partner, Zach Dula, and even your recommendation to really try that Chicago deep dish pizza. Is there anything else you wanted to tell our audience before we left here?
Nothing too much. I guess I'm always open to answer any questions. But the biggest advice I could give someone is just to always keep grinding and get out there and do what you love every day. And it's just a matter of time until it's going to pay off. So I think if people can put their head down and work hard, good things will always happen.